All right, everybody. I hope you're doing well. This is Rosh, and this is going to be a tutorial video on how to route audio into Zoom using Loopback, using OBS, having multiple camera angles, routing audio from a DAW such as Logic or Pro Tools into Zoom. In this pandemic, a lot of musicians are transitioning online, and we're trying to do lessons and sessions online. And I've had a lot of questions about people asking, how do I route audio from my DAW into Zoom and get some processing going? Or how do I use multiple camera angles when I'm teaching lessons? Or how do I have my client hear what's coming from a recording that I'm using in Logic or Pro Tools? All these questions that have come my way. I've been very fortunate that I've been doing this kind of thing for a while, even before the pandemic. So I wanted to make this tutorial video to help some of you guys out. So if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. So the first thing I would recommend is getting a program called Loopback, and you can see it right here. It is on rogueamoeba.com. I'll put the link in the description. Obviously, you have to buy the program, but it does come with a trial if you want to test it out and see if this is going to work for you in your workflow. So as you can see, I have a couple presets that I've already made that are what I use for different situations. So if I'm recording, I use this preset. If I'm teaching or if I'm working with a client remotely, I use this preset. But I'll show you some basics on how to build different presets in here. This program basically makes a brand new audio source like an aggregate device, so that you can route audio from multiple programs, audio from multiple recording interfaces, all into one virtual interface that can be read by Zoom or that can be read by Logic or anything. So what you're going to do is you're going to make a new virtual device. Let's call this test, or let's call this Rosh tutorial. And when you click this plus button, these are what's going to show up here is all your applications that are running. And these are going to be all your input devices. So, and you can have also special sources. And so if you want to route different audio from different sources, open the program first. But let's do something really basic. So I use the Universal Audio Apollo series as my recording interface. So I have, in my studio, I have multiple Apollos like stacked together. But if you're using a Focusrite or if you're using a Symphony IO, you'll see the name of your recording interface here. And for the purpose of this tutorial, you can even use, if you have an Apollo Twin or something like that, it'll just say Universal Audio Thunderbolt right here. Okay, so as you can see with my recording interface, I have multiple inputs, but my microphone right here, as you can see, is coming in on input number 4. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that Zoom only reads audio coming in on channels 1 and 2. So a lot of the issues that are stemming from people not receiving audio or clients not receiving audio from the other end of Zoom is that your audio is being routed into another channel. So for example, if you're speaking into channel 4 and you're using your recording interface into Zoom, it's only reading audio on channels 1 and 2, but it's not reading audio from channels 3 and 4 or any of these other inputs. So what Loopback allows you to do is actually route your audio into channels 1 and 2, and it's stereo right here. So if I bring in a Zoom call, as you can see, what we're going to do is here, down here, you can see all these different speakers and microphones and everything. You want to select whatever you name your preset in Loopback. So in this case, we called it Rosh tutorial. And what we're going to do is unmute this, and you can see that as I speak into the microphone, it is getting audio, and it's getting audio into channels 1 and 2, even though it's coming into channels 4 on my recording interface. So if you're using modeler like the AXFX3, it would be the same thing. What you would do is add another device. So in this case, I'll add the AXFX3, and then I would route that into 1 and 2. And we definitely don't want these connected. So now the output coming from the AXFX is going to 1 and 2. So now the client on the other end can hear my guitar as well with the process signal. So I'll just reach over and just throw my guitar really quick. And you can hear that, and they can also get the audio in there. Now, if you want them to hear something from Spotify, for example, again, you're going to route all the audio coming out of this program into channels 1 and 2. Remember, Zoom only reads on channels 1 and 2. Any program that you're using, you want to route the audio into channels 1 and 2. So, all right, so let's delete these. Let's delete that for now. And then, so the next step is, a lot of people have asked, how do I get audio from, for example, Logic or Pro Tools into Zoom? So you would go through a very similar process, but I would recommend watching this section of the video if you're a little bit confused, because it can be a little bit tricky to wrap your head around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a new Logic session, and let's bring this over here. Okay, so we're going to create a new Logic session, and you want to set up a couple things. So in your audio settings, again, your input and output device, don't use your recording interface. Use whatever you named the preset in Loopback. So we're going to do this, and we're going to hit apply. And then now, keep in mind what is going on in your recording software is that Loopback is making new channels. So your recording software no longer understands that these are the channels inputs going into your recording software. It's going to be whatever you put here. So for example, instead of routing my audio from my recording interface directly into channels 1 and 2, what we're going to do instead is I'm going to create, multiple channels like this. In this case, I'll just put my vocals into channel 4. And when you are setting up your recording, you want to also do some of your channels right here. Okay, let's make a new track. This one's not showing. All right, there we go. Now that should work. So sometimes you end up having to reset the audio. So you would select none and then just go back. And then now it's going to see all these extra inputs that you have made in this preset. I've only made 4. So right here on this input, you want to make, it'll show how many inputs you made in Loopback. So for example, if we make 5 and 6, and then maybe connect, 5 to here, 6 to here, whatever. That'll work. Oops. And so let's just delete that for now. And then if I go into audio, reset this, hit apply, what you're going to see here is now it's going to show 6 inputs. As soon as I get this whirling ball of death out of the way. There we go. All right, and then now you'll see 5, 6, 7, 8 inputs, right? Corresponds to these inputs. So right now we're going to select input 4 because that's where my vocals are coming in. And as you can see, if I speak into the microphone now, the audio is being routed here. And if I actually want to hear myself, you can put the input monitoring on, those kinds of things, but keep in mind we haven't set any monitors here yet. So now this is where things get a little bit confusing. So remember, we're trying to route audio from Logic into Zoom. So if you see this, you might go, wait a minute, what's going on here? I don't get this. What you need to do is you need to open up Logic and route the audio output of Logic into 1 and 2, which is what Zoom will read, okay? And then if you want to actually hear what's being sent to your client, for example, this is the monitoring, this is what the output. So I'm going to actually make my universal audio the output device. Now, let's just disconnect all these other things because on my particular interface, outputs 1 and 2 correspond to my studio monitors. And so now what we're going to see is that, as you can see, there's no audio being routed into Logic right now. There's nothing coming out of Logic being sent into Zoom, which is channels 1 and 2, being sent into the monitors because I haven't enabled input monitoring or recording. So now you can hear that there is some, going out of logic into Zoom into the monitor. So for example, sorry for that weird latency, I'll turn that off. So for example, if you have any type of processing like EQing or something that's really easy to hear, we'll just put like a delay and echo or something on top of this. If I record enable that again, and remember, going out of logic into Zoom, now they can hear your processing. Okay, so that's super annoying, but hopefully you get the idea. So for example, if you have any type of compression or any of your plugins that you want to use on your voice or whatever inputs coming out of that, this is the thing that can be a little tricky to understand. Remember, this is creating all the inputs for Logic to see. This coming out of Logic into channels 1 and 2 is what Zoom will see. So there's nothing that says that you can't route into channels 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, into Logic. It's the output. So for example, if I have my universal audio connected to, let's say, channel 5 instead. So now Logic's going to read audio from channel 5. So as you can see, there's nothing coming in, blah, 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 blah. Okay, because we're reading on channel 4, we want to read from channel 5. Check, 1, 2, now it's channel 5. Okay, so this is a way to get audio from Logic or Pro Tools into Zoom. And you can build multiple things. So if you want something from Spotify, if you're working with a client using Adobe Premiere or something, or if you are using a preamp like an Axe-Fx, all these different things, all these different sources you want to route into channels 1 and 2. Now, if you want to hear yourself, then you also want to send output from channels 1 and 2 into the output of whatever your recording interface is. If you don't actually want to hear it out of your recording interface instead, you can obviously use your internal speakers or something. So for example, this would be played out of my speakers. Put that back to input 4. Where we go? Oh.
Check. Now you can hear, this is my laptop speakers, and it's kind of about to feedback.
So we're going to
turn that off. And then again, you can put the process. Okay.
So let's turn that off before it feeds back. So hopefully that part of the audio makes sense. And in the next part of this tutorial, I'll go over how to route video using multiple sources, using OBS, using Zoom. If you have a Canon camera, all these different things that should hopefully help you out. One thing I forgot to mention in that first take that I also wanted to cover is that after you set up all your devices, so for example, make sure you have Spotify going into channels 1 and 2, make sure you have Zoom open. You want to also make a separate pair of channels. So for the sake of this tutorial, it's going to really depend on how many inputs you want to put into Zoom or into Logic or Pro Tools or whatever you have open. It's going to definitely change depending on, again, the amount of inputs you have. You want to make an extra pair of inputs. So for the sake of this tutorial, we'll do 9 and 10. And you're going to treat these inputs right here as what is going to be sent into your studio monitors or your headphones or anything like that. Because while you have everything running into channel 1 and 2, that's going to be sent into Zoom. So if you have Logic, if you have Spotify, you can have, YouTube, whatever, going into channels 1 and 2 so that your client can hear. If you need to hear anything, you also want to send it into a pair of channels that's going to be sent to your whatever your output device is. So we're going to treat 9 and 10 as what you want to hear in your monitors and your laptop speakers, whatever. And so you're going to hit plus right here, and then it's going to give you all the outputs that you have. So in my case, my studio monitors are hooked up to like my Apollos, but if you have internal speakers, so for example, let's say you want to hear everything out of your laptop speakers, instead of doing 1 and 2, which is everything that's being sent into Zoom, you can do that, which I showed just previously. If you want to send separate things into your internal speakers, send, for example, Zoom into channels 9 and 10. So now that if your client is talking to you, the output of Zoom will be sent into channels 9 and 10, and then you want to send these into into your internal speakers. Or in my case, I'm using an Apollo. I'll disconnect everything here. This is arduous. And what I want to do is, I'll just delete that for now, is that everything that's from channel 9 and 10, I want to send into my studio monitors, which are the outputs of channels 1 and 2. So I would connect channel 9 to there, channel 10 to there, and then these outputs right here are my studio monitors. So obviously things are going to change depending on your setup, but you definitely want to have a separate pair of channels just for your output, just so you can hear. If you're using, your headphones or whatever, if you have different types of speakers, if you're using like some kind of like USB speaker system or whatever, it's going to all show up here in the monitors. These are actually my external monitors that also have speakers on them. So if I wanted to route something into my external monitors, I can do that. Whatever you have, you also want to put in the monitors, but make sure you have a separate pair of channels just for routing the audio that way.
All right, so this is going to be the video portion of this video tutorial. And I had a lot of questions about how to use OBS, how to use multiple camera angles into a Zoom meeting if you're working with a client, if you're given a lesson or something. How do I use multiple camera angles? How do I use multiple devices? So using a DSLR or mirrorless camera, using your iPhone, using the webcam, and how to route different ways to route video for Zoom. So my personal setup is that I use the Canon EOS M50 mirrorless camera, and I use an iPhone. I used the iPhone 8 for years, but I currently use the iPhone 12. Any iPhone with a camera will work. And then last but not least, I also use the webcam from my MacBook Pro. Now, I personally do not use OBS, and I do not really recommend it if you're going to be trying to route stuff into Zoom, but I did have some questions on how to use it. So here is OBS, and one of the first things you want to get is the virtual camera plugin. And I used it a while back, and but I always had some problems with the latency issues. So let's go over how to add certain devices with this. So the first thing I'm going to add is actually my Canon EOS M50 mirrorless camera. It's a great camera for this kind of situation if you're going to be working with clients remotely. Sometimes I have the camera pointed at me, and then I'll use a separate camera angle to point at a Axfex or something if I'm programming remotely for a client. So those are different options that you have. So when you start up OBS, you're going to hit this plus sign, and let me just move this up, and then you're going to hit Siphon Client, and this program that I'm using right here is called Camera Live, and it works with only Canon cameras. And what I'm doing is I have a mini HDMI cable going from the EOS M50 into my MacBook, and then this is going to siphon the video feed from your Canon camera, and there's a list on the website of what Canon cameras are supported. A lot of them are supported. So if you have an EOS R, an R6, and a Rebel or any of those Canon cameras, you can use it into OBS as well as Zoom. So you're going to start Siphon Client, hit OK, and then you're going to select Camera Live, and it's taking a feed. So this is the Canon, and I have the lens, obviously, manual focus. So hello. And as you can kind of see, there's a little bit of latency. And this is one of the reasons why I personally don't use OBS. But you can drag these sliders to make the camera angle as big or as small as you want. So the next thing that you could also add is if you're going to use the webcam off your MacBook or your iMac. So you would hit Video Capture Device instead. And you would use the FaceTime HD camera and hit OK. And it's going to pop up. So right now I have the webcam pointed at my chest. So if I'm giving a guitar lesson, for example, then the student can see what my picking hand is doing, or if I'm playing what chords I'm playing. And you have a lot of different options with this. And again, you can use these sliders to make the feed as large or as small as you want. And of course, you can place it in different areas of the window that you're going to be using. The next device that you probably could use or would want to use for a third camera angle is an iPhone. So I have a lightning cable attached from my iPhone directly into the MacBook, or a dock. A dock works as well. And we're going to select device, and we're going to go iPhone 12. You can use any iPhone. I just personally have a 12, and I'm going to hit OK. And here is the third camera feed. So I'm looking right directly into the iPhone. I'm using the front-facing camera, and as you can see, there's no buttons or no extraneous stuff that's happening on the feed. So I'm using an app called Clean Feed, and you can use this. You can get this app off the Apple Store. And what it does is it gets rid of all the external craziness and all that extraneous stuff. So it's just a clean feed. So it's functioning just like a webcam. I'm using the front-facing camera, like I said, but you can use the rear-facing camera on this as well. I just prefer to use the front-facing camera because on the iPhone 12, it's pretty good. But if you need a higher quality, if you have a different iPhone model, you know, the rear-facing camera totally works. It's just I want to see if I'm in frame or whatever. Just to, you know, have that option. So as you can see in OBS, there's 3 different camera angles that I have. There's some little bit of latency. It's not like crazy bad or anything like that. But one thing that you probably notice is that if you use the Clean Feed app, if I'm raising my left hand right now, and you can see that it's reversed. So what you want to do is you want to go to transform, and then you want to flip horizontal, and then now it's going to be normal. So there are a little bit of some latency issues. It's not like crazy bad, but it can get a little crazier, which I'm going to show you in a second. And if you followed the last part of my tutorial video, what's going to happen is that the Zoom call that you're on is going to be using the audio from your preset in Loopback. Okay, so one of the issues that I have with OBS is that because you're using an audio source such as Loopback, you're going to have this kind of like latency, and it's going to look like kind of like a badly dubbed like movie or something. And you do have options, like you can add, for example, you can add audio input capture here, and then add the zoom, or add whatever you're using in Loopback. My preset is called routed through Apollo, blah, blah, blah. And then what you can do is hit this gear icon and go to advanced audio properties, and then set up the sync offset for about 100 milliseconds. Depends on your internet connection speed and all that kind of stuff, and that can help, but I find that it's really annoying. But again, your mileage may vary. If you have a good internet connection speed, or if you have like a really strong computer, you may not run into any of these issues. So once again, I have 3 camera angles. I'm going to point to the lens of the Canon. Now I'm going to point to the lens of the webcam, and then I'm going to point to the lens of my iPhone. So other options that you can have is that I'm going to just take off this input right here. You can also share windows. So if you have a Logic session open, for example, you can share the window, or you can share, you know, you can share like your desktop. If you put display capture, I have multiple monitors, so sometimes I'll put the Logic window on a different monitor. So if you select window capture, what's going to happen is all the windows that you have open, you're going to get a list. And then you can select any of the windows. So for example, you know, some of these are going to be different things that you have. If you have Logic open or Pro Tools or whatever, you can share that too. For the scope of this video, we're not going to really do that, but I just wanted to show you. Now, here is the issue. So once you have your camera feed, you've placed the camera angles that you want, you have maybe some space here, and you want to, you know, share a Logic session, or you want to share something from an iPad or something, you're going to go to Tools up at the top, and then you're going to start Virtual Camera. And so here's what's going to happen. You're going to open up Zoom, and you're going to select in the video OBS Virtual Camera. And so now I'm going to talk. And as you can see, there's a lot of latency issues. So this is what's being sent into OBS, but here's what's coming back in Zoom. As you can see, it is totally out of sync. This can be really, really annoying. And the more camera feeds you have, or the more video that you're sending into it, the worse it's going to get. So OBS can be really useful if you are streaming directly from OBS. So if you're going directly into Twitch or Facebook Live, or doing something like that, if you're doing some kind of live streaming thing as a musician, or you're doing live streaming performance straight from OBS, totally cool. As you can see, the latency in the OBS program is totally fine. And then you can start streaming and doing all that kind of stuff. Again, there's plenty of tutorials out there. This video is geared more for like musicians trying to use Zoom, for working with clients, teaching, doing all that kind of stuff. But as you can see, the latency is just is ridiculous. It's obnoxious. It's really bad. So it gets better with less camera feeds that you have. But if you really think about it, it's just because you're converting all this video feed and then trying to send it into Zoom. So there's always going to be tons of latency. So I'm going to close OBS. And what's going to happen is that here's my recommendation. If you are going to be using Zoom specifically, I would recommend getting a program called CamTwist. And I believe this program's free. And this is what I personally use. And CamTwist is really great. So it allows you to do a bunch of different things. So what we're going to do is we're going to select CamTwist. And in the CamTwist program, what's going to happen is that you select which webcam you want. And so, for example, I'm going to select my iPhone 12. And let me just move this a little bit. And in the Zoom meeting, and boom. Now you see the iPhone 12. So this is what the client is going to, client or whoever's on the other end of the Zoom call is going to see. So I'm speaking directly into my iPhone, or I'm looking directly into my iPhone. Obviously, the audio that's being captured right here is coming from, whatever you made in Loopback. And then you can switch camera angles on the fly. So I'll select my webcam, and it's going to route it into here. So now the client sees what's on the webcam. Or you are going to use siphon, and then you're going to select camera live, and then this is the Canon EOS M50 or whatever DSLR you're using. And if you get pretty quick at this, it is really seamless. And as you can see, the latency is pretty manageable. Obviously, depending on, like right now I have like 100 windows open. So my MacBook is pretty taxed right now. So using the siphon from my DSLR can be a little dicey. And Canon does have a webcam utility that you can also use. I found that it's also has a lot of latency. So again, when there aren't as many programs running, the latency is actually non-existent in terms of how synchronized my voice is to the audio. As you can see, if I use, like, for example, an iPhone instead, it's totally manageable. So we'll go to the webcam, pick the 12, and it's totally fine. And again, it's just because I have like a ton of windows open just for this tutorial, but the less windows you have open, or if you have a stronger MacBook or anything like that, you're going to be totally fine. And CamTwist has a lot of really great features. So for example, I'm raising my left hand again, and you see that, this is like backwards. So if I was playing guitar and teaching a guitar lesson, it's going to look like I'm left-handed. So you can totally just go to LR flip. Where is it? LR flip, and then you just flip the camera. For example, you can put text on here. Hi, everybody. And you can, change the color, change the size, change the background, all these different things. And these are really useful. And I've been using CamTwist for a long time, so I can fly really fast. And if you want to be obnoxious in a Zoom meeting or something, you can do, any of these filters or whatever. And there's a lot of really useful utilities in here that'll help when you're working with clients. And so instead, you'll notice that the latency issue is going to be non-existent, and all you have to do is switch between different cameras. So here's my DSLR or mirrorless camera. Here is the FaceTime camera. And once you get a little bit more practice in this, and we're going to do the LR flip, you're going to be totally fine. So once again, I hope this is super helpful for all you guys and gals and everybody else out there, all you folks out there who are doing a lot of remote stuff. If I didn't cover your particular setup in this video, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. I would be more than glad to help you out. Set up the camera angles the way you want. I definitely recommend just switching between them. And there are a lot of really useful utilities out there. If you're a drummer, I would also recommend getting, something that you can work remotely, like using Logic Remote or something like that. There's also some, wireless mice and wireless apps that you can use. You can even control Zoom remotely using your iPhone. So there's a lot of those. I'll leave some links in, for some of the utilities I use, like especially if I'm on the drums or something. But I find that OBS can be a little dodgy if you're trying to route it into Zoom, but if you are using OBS and you're streaming directly from that for Facebook or Twitch or any of these other streaming platforms straight from OBS, it's actually really good and you get a lot of the options. If you're doing multiple camera angles into Zoom, it's better to be switching using some utility like Cam Twist. There's some other programs out there that I have used in the past, but I found that Cam Twist is the most reliable, and if I remember correctly, it is free. And you can save some of your setups here. You can, do different things here. You can also, of course, in Zoom, always just share your screen or share an iPad or share a feed from any device that's plugged into your computer. But I feel like this is probably the best approach for a lot of what people have been telling me they're trying to do. So if, again, you need any help, by all means, feel free to reach out to me, and I would be more than happy to help you guys out. So I hope this is super helpful. Stay safe out there in the pandemic, and hopefully we'll all get to play a gig together soon at some point in the future. All right, so this is Rosh. Once again, feel free to share this with whoever could use the help, and I'll see you guys next time.